The quarantine ward of Station Nexus 7 hummed with the cold efficiency of 1,000 automated systems, each one designed to maintain life without ever touching it. In the sterile white corridors of Sublevel 9, where the air tasted of recycled oxygen and antiseptic, Daniel pressed his palm against the observation window and stared at the creatures nobody wanted. They were small, barely the size of human infants, with translucent skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Their eyes, too large for their malformed faces, reflected every spectrum of light that human eyes couldn't perceive. Some had extra limbs that twisted at wrong angles. Others had gaps in their exoskeletons, revealing the vulnerable tissue beneath. They were the Zentarii, and they were dying. "You shouldn't be here, Dr. Chun." Jassie's voice cut through the silence like a scalpel. She stood behind him, her uniform bearing the insignia of the Galactic Child Welfare Division, a job that had long ago stripped the warmth from her voice. "These specimens are quarantined for a reason." Daniel didn't turn away from the window. Inside the chamber, one of the tiny beings he'd started calling her Lumina in his mind reached toward the glass with 3 delicate fingers. Her bioluminescence flickered from blue to amber, a pattern his translation AI had identified as distress. "They're not specimens," Daniel said quietly. "They're children." Jassie moved beside him, her reflection ghosting across the transparent barrier. She was beautiful in the way that ice sculptures were beautiful, precise, cold, untouchable. 5 years ago, before the Convergence Wars, she had been different. But the galaxy had a way of hardening people, especially those who witnessed what she had witnessed. "Their genetic failures," Jassie corrected, her tone clinical. "When the Zentarii homeworld collapsed into its dying star, the evacuation ships used experimental growth acceleration to save their young. It didn't work as intended." She gestured to the creatures. "Accelerated cellular degradation, neural pathway corruption, organ systems that develop out of sequence. The Zentarii Council has already signed the termination order. It's more humane than watching them suffer." "Humane." Daniel tested the word like poison on his tongue. "We're going to kill them because they're not perfect, because they're inconvenient. We're going to euthanize them because there's no cure," Jassie said. And for the briefest moment, something cracked in her voice. "The Council tried. 17 research teams across 9 planets. Every genetic therapy failed. These children will never survive outside artificial environments. They'll never speak, never learn, never be loved." The question hung between them like a challenge. Jassie's jaw tightened. "Love doesn't rewrite DNA, Daniel." "No," he agreed, finally turning to face her. "But maybe it rewrites what's possible." He had been working on this for months, ever since he'd first seen the Zentarii young through this very window. While the galaxy debated ethics and resource allocation, Daniel had done something radical. He had sat with them. Hour after hour, he'd remained in the observation room, speaking to them, singing to them, pressing his hand against the glass whenever they approached, and something impossible had begun to happen. "I've been documenting changes," Daniel said, pulling up a holographic display from his wrist console. Neural scans bloomed in the air between them, before and after images painted in false color. "Look at this. Lumina, Subject 7. Her neural pathways are stabilizing. The degradation has slowed by 43% in the last 6 weeks." Jassie studied the data, her professional mask slipping for just a moment. That's not possible. "What variable did you introduce?" "Presence," Daniel said simply. "Human contact. Not physical. The quarantine protocols won't allow that. But proximity. Voice. Attention. I've been here every day. All day. You're saying that being near them is altering their genetics." Skepticism dripped from every word. "I'm saying that maybe the Zentarii accelerated their growth so quickly that their bodies developed, but something else didn't. Something intangible." Daniel looked back at the children, at Lumina, who now pressed all 3 of her small hands against the glass, her bioluminescence pulsing in a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Every species in the galaxy has one thing in common. We all evolved in communities. We all needed each other to survive. What if these children are dying because they're developing without that fundamental connection? Jassie was quiet for a long time. She pulled up her own console, cross-referencing Daniel's data with the broader medical reports. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the soft hum of life support systems. The termination order executes in 72 hours, she finally said. Her voice was different now, not warm, but no longer frozen either. If you're wrong, then they die anyway, Daniel interrupted. If I'm right, we save 17 lives. Isn't that worth the risk? Jassy looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years. She saw the dark circles under his eyes, the way his hands trembled slightly from exhaustion, the fierce determination that bordered on madness. What are you asking for? Access, Daniel said immediately. Full access. Let me in there with them. Let me hold them, feed them, speak to them without a barrier. If love, if connection, if being seen can alter their neurology from outside the chamber, imagine what direct contact could do. You could die, Jassy said flatly. We don't know if their condition is contagious. The quarantine exists for a reason. Then I'll die, Daniel said, and Jassy saw in his eyes the same expression she'd seen in a mirror 5 years ago, before the galaxy had taught her to stop hoping. But at least they won't die alone. At least someone will have whispered to them, "You are wanted. You are loved." The words hit Jassy like a physical blow. She thought of the thousands of children she'd processed through this facility, abandoned, broken, unwanted. She thought of the reports she'd filed, the recommendations she'd made, always clinical, always efficient. When had she stopped seeing them as children? When had she started calling them specimens? Lumina made a sound, soft, melodic, like wind chimes made of starlight. The other 16 children joined her, their bioluminescence synchronizing into patterns that translated to a single, desperate concept. Please. Jassy closed her eyes. She thought of protocols and procedures, of career suicide and liability. She thought of the galaxy's judgment, of the Council's fury. Then she thought of Daniel's data, of neural pathways that shouldn't have stabilized but did, of cellular degradation that shouldn't have slowed but had. She thought of 17 tiny beings who had never known a gentle touch. I'll authorize it, she whispered, her voice breaking on the words. I'll override the quarantine. You'll have 72 hours. Daniel's hand found hers, squeezing once with desperate gratitude before he moved toward the airlock. Jassy watched him initiate the decontamination sequence, watched him step into the chamber where the Zentarii children waited. When the inner door opened, they didn't flee. They didn't hide. They reached for him with their imperfect hands, their 2 large eyes reflecting his face, their bioluminescence erupting in patterns that needed no translation. Hope, joy, love. Daniel knelt among them, gathering them close, whispering words that Jassy couldn't hear through the glass. But she didn't need to hear them. She could see what they meant in the way the children's distress patterns faded, in the way their cellular structures began to stabilize in real time on the medical monitors. She could see it in the way Lumina pressed her small, 3-fingered hand against Daniel's chest, directly over his heart, and pulsed with light that seemed to say, I am seen. I am known. I am loved. And for the first time in 5 years, Jassy felt something thaw inside her own chest. Something she'd thought the galaxy had frozen beyond repair. In 72 hours, they would prove the impossible. That love could indeed rewrite what was possible. That being wanted could heal wounds that medicine never could. That the smallest and most imperfect among them deserved someone to whisper, I will give you love. Until then, Daniel would hold them, and Jassy would guard them, and 17 tiny alien children would learn what it meant to be cherished.